Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to talk about subroutines. What is a subroutine? It's a little program inside your program that you write using all the tools you've learned so far. And then you can just call it whenever you need it. Subroutine starts with sub, then the name of the subroutine, and then two round brackets. And you can just use this as if you've created a new keyword, but it's case sensitive. Right, so here I've got print with a capital P, and here I've got it all lowercase. That doesn't matter, but if you use this one, it has to be exact. Keep that in mind. And when you're finished, you go to end, you write end sub. So in your program, it says subdemo 0. Okay, where is subdemo 0? Ah, there it is. And in YAB, what we do is we first write the main program, and then all the subroutines come below it. That's the opposite from how it's done in Bash or Pascal, from what little I remember of Pascal. Right, so they don't have to be in alphabetical order. You can call a subroutine from inside another subroutine, and it doesn't matter if it has already been defined. Right? YAB will find it. Okay, so I've written this little program. I hope you can read it. I had to make it a little bit smaller than we're used to. So we start off with global variables. These are variables that are true everywhere in the program unless I have said not in this subroutine. YAB does not require you to declare your global variables. I can write here C equals 77 and it's automatically global. It's just a very good idea to have a little block where you just define these things. If you don't want to make them 0, just put it in a comment. That's also fine. Uses a tiny little bit less memory, I suppose. But I always start my programs with that because it clears up a lot of confusion. Because I can say here, C equals 77. And there I've defined a global variable inside a subroutine. You can do that. But then you get confused once your program grows beyond a certain size. Okay, so we start off with that. Then A, we set the variable A, it's a numeric variable, to 23. Doesn't really matter what number it is. Then we print in the main program, which is this bit here. Right? Here is your main program. A is equal to. Then I convert with this str string function the value of A to a string and stick it on the end of the string here. Right, it's called string concatenation, and we're going to have a whole lot of lessons about the fun things you can do with strings in YAB. And then I have a colon, and I print again to open up an empty line. Okay, that could have been done like this. See, same thing. Just looks a little neater. Then I call subdemo0 and another empty line. Subdemo1, empty line. Then I call subdemo2 in a slightly different way. I set its value to the variable b. Now, in other versions of BASIC, you find a distinction between subroutines and functions, depending on whether you want to get a value back out of the subroutine. In YAB, we don't have that. If you don't want a value out of your subroutine, just don't send one. Easy as that. Okay. So let's have a look at this first one. Nothing much happens in here, right? So we still have A, and it still has its global value, which we've defined up here. Now, in subdemo 1, things get a little more interesting, because here I define a local variable with the same name. And now it overrules the global one. You know, it's a bit counterintuitive, because you'd think that, global is more important and, it should take precedence, but that's not the way it works. A local variable, it has precedence over a global one. So in here, I say A is 35. Not 23, 35. And then I print what its value is, and I end the subroutine. So your program goes from here, subdemo 1, I don't know that keyword. Is there a subroutine with that name? Yes, here it is. Okay, do that, do that, do that, do that, and jumps back and prints an empty line. Within a subroutine, you can do everything. You can have for next loops, while went loops. You can play around with arrays. You can do everything you've learned so far. But you've got to keep in mind, try to work with local variables as much as you can. You can't always do that. You sometimes just have to use a global. But the more this is a self-contained little program that runs without any reference to the outside world, the better. So once again, we print its value. Then in the third subroutine, we do two things that are different. First, we say this value b is whatever comes out of subdemo 2. And then we say, and by the way, send this value a to the subroutine. You're not restricted to sending one value, because you can send as many as you like. You can have strings and numbers mixed up, right? So you can also send a, and you can send a string, right? And then over here, you can call it a again, if you want. Then it'll automatically become a local variable a in the subroutine. Or you can give it a new name, right? Because it doesn't send the variable a, it sends its value. So over here, you just need something that can be a name for a numeric value. It sends the value 23, and here we're going to call it B. Let me just fix this, otherwise my program won't work anymore. If you send a value and there's nothing here to receive it, your program will crash. So if I send A and a string, then here I have to say B and let's call it Z string. That'll work because it's one value, one string, and it's received here, and one value, one string. Again, some basic dialects are smart enough that you can have a long list of things to send and only send some of them. Yab is not. If you here are expecting 4 variables, then you'd better send 4 variables, even if they're 0 or empty strings. Okay, so here we've sent A, the value of A, we call it B, because here I want a local variable A, which I'm going to do something else with, and that is 35. So we've sent 23, we've defined 35. And so before we end the subroutine, I say return A plus B. 23 plus 35, we would expect to get 58, right? Which, when it jumps back here, says, right, the result from subdemo2 is str string B. See, so we play subdemo2, send it the value of A, and feed the result into the variable B. Okay, let's run this sucker. Boom, 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 line 27. Let's see, let's just save it again. There we go. Okay, let's clear this. Okay, so in the main program, A is equal to 23. In the 0th subroutine, not much happens. A has its global value, which is 23. But here in the first subroutine, over here, A is a local variable, and the global variable A is invisible. It's overruled. Here A is equal to 35, which is what I defined here. Here in the second subroutine, we've passed on the value of A, but we've named it B because we want to use A for something else. B is therefore automatically a local variable, no need to declare it. Okay, so I don't need to say B equals whatever it's, because it's already been done here. Right, and we're back in the main program, and the result from subdemo2 is 58. Why would you do that? I mean, you could just print this whole thing in one long program. No problem. Well, here, because it's just a demonstration, I've only called the subroutines once each. But in a real program, you use a subroutine to do something that needs to be done a number of times. In fact, if you're following the even-numbered lessons, I keep saying let the machine do the work. If you are writing a line of code more than once, stick it in a subroutine and let the machine do that. Because sooner or later you're going to change one of those two lines, and then now they're different lines and they don't do the same thing anymore. So if you need the same thing done a number of times, right? If it needs to be done right now, you put in a for next loop, sure. But if it needs to be done and you can't predict in advance when or how often it needs to be done, then you use a subroutine. So, these subroutines will live in your program itself. In the next lesson, we're going to see how to write them in an external file. In other words, how to put them in a library, which in YAB is ridiculously easy. Thanks for watching.